Welcome viewers to a brand new series of Aelixir Healing podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sohail Ahmed, a GP based in West Yorkshire, United Kingdom. And today on our launch episode, we have two guests with us, international guests. We're going to talk about something very unique and interesting today. So I'll introduce our guests. Welcome, Jolande Bakker and Michelle Depiro. Welcome. And it's your first podcast for both of you, so exciting. Hope this goes well and we can enlighten our viewers and learn something new today. So I will introduce Jolande first. So Jolande lives and works in Amsterdam, and you trained in acupuncture and NAET, which I'll let you explain what that is. And you started both of those in 2002, and you've been part of the NAET organization in Holland since 2005 and been an instructor for NAET therapy since 2010, until 2010. And you've developed some very interesting methods following on from your experience in NAET called the total reset method, which we'll be discussing today. And besides that, you have quite a lot of other things that you do, which we hopefully will touch on today as well. And we have Michelle, who is based in France. Michelle is a very young gentleman at 83, who is a member of the Stanford Alumni Association, dedicated to healthcare. And again, he wears many different hats of therapies, including something called free wakeful dreaming, which he trained in 2002 under Georges Romy. And he's also a NAET practitioner trained in 2005. And much like Jolande, developed his experience into the total reset method and became an instructor in 2017. And he has developed his interest further into autoimmune diseases using this method, which we will be discussing today as well. Welcome both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
I will start with you, Jolande, if you want to share some background of how you got involved with NAET and what NAET is actually, because it's still not well known, even though it's been around for over 25 years. But it's not well recognized or well understood by many. So it would be interesting to share your thoughts on what NAET is and how you developed your experience from NAET and went into further training.
Yeah. NAET or NAET stands for Nambudripet's Allergy Elimination Techniques. And Dr. Devi Nambudripet is from America, California, and she was very allergic when she was very young and always searching for a solution other than taking medication. And she discovered this method, NAET, by getting an acupuncture treatment because she reacted to a carrot that she was preparing for dinner. And she got an acupuncture treatment after that. And after the treatment, she felt very good, better than she did in years. So she was thinking, what happened this time? Why am I feeling so good? And she found out something and she developed it further, treated herself, her family, her friends. And then she was thinking, okay, I need to bring this to the world because I can help a lot of allergic people with this. So that was in the 1980s, 85, I don't know exactly. And in 2000, the NAET seminars came to Europe, to Holland. A friend of mine did a seminar, and 2 years later, he asked me to start working for him as an NAET practitioner. So in 2002, I started the seminars in France. And in 2005, there were not that many practitioners in Holland still working with it, because you go to France to learn and then you come back, you are in your own practice. But if you have problems, there was nowhere to go to ask questions. So we said, okay, then we are going to take the seminars back to Holland, and we're going to provide the people who are joining the seminars with our expertise. So they can come to us, they can call us, and we can help them. So we did that. The first seminar was in 2005. And then we started becoming a practitioner, a teacher ourselves for NAET. So from 2006 till 2010, I was still, I was not a head instructor. I was just helping out. I've been to England one time with a teacher from America. And then in 2010, I became a head instructor and the partner for NAET Europe in Holland until 2015. And then Dr. Devi, well, she thought she could take a rest and leave everything to her son, Roy. And because they didn't have any instructors anymore, and Roy didn't want to be an instructor, they said we're going to do the seminars online, only online. So we and our other colleagues in Europe were out of a job. And then people were asking us, when is there a seminar, when we will teach again? And we said, yeah, we're not allowed to teach. So one day, one of the people who called us, she said, well, give it another name and just start teaching again. So we did. In 2000, at the end of 2016, we did our first seminar in the total reset method. And at the end of the year, the rest of our colleagues in Europe didn't have a contract with Roy anymore. So they joined us. And the total reset method was born. And because, you know, the instructors by then, they had a lot of experience in the method. They were working with it for 10, 15 years. So we took that experience and put it on the NAET method. So we took it forward where NAET stopped producing new things, stopped developing the method. And we are still developing. We are still looking for ways to enhance the treatment, but also make it a shorter period of time that people have to come to your office every week. But because that's a big problem for a lot of people. If they have to come to your office every week or every 2 weeks for 6 months or a year or 2 years, then a lot of times they stop and they look for something else. And I know a lot of practitioners stopped using the NAET method because of this.
So going back to the origins and the need for NAET, I mean, in recent years, there's been some huge studies done in the United Kingdom, and the suggestion is that at least 1 in 10, and maybe that is an underestimation, when working in general practice in the UK. I would say that's a huge miscalculation. Maybe there is probably much more. I mean, on a daily basis, I'm seeing probably at least 20, 25, 30% of the general population suffers from some allergy of some form. And they can range from trivial kind of bit of sinusitis or skin irritation to quite severe, life-threatening and debilitating autoimmune conditions, which at their basis are kind of stemming from allergies. So there is that need, and as we understand, conventional sort of therapies, immune suppression does not always solve the problem, and in fact can lead to many other problems. So NAET had a huge impact, from what I understand, when it originally started. Now, I will add a link within the description to NAET so people can see what NAET involves, but in essence, it's using kinesiology and acupressure as the two main modalities. for testing and treating, and using vials which contain, I mean, the allergens, understandably. So it's a method to try to eliminate and balance the allergens or the agent that is causing the imbalance within the sort of energy field. There's a good video which I'll add a link to, which kind of gives a good illustration of that. But as you mentioned, there have been many restrictions with NAET in the treatment protocols and the processes, which can be lengthy, which can be quite demanding on the patients themselves. And part of that is the avoidance of the allergen. So right, so 25 hours, 24 hours, you have to avoid the allergen. And that can be very difficult for people who are trying to avoid the allergen. And also that the whole protocol is devised in a way that you have to go through specific, what we call the basics of treatments. And that can be up to what, 10, 12, 15, if not more treatments before you actually get to what your particular allergens may be.
Yeah.
So it's lengthy, it's quite demanding, and can be very expensive process. So tell me, how did you evolve NAET, and how is the total reset method different from NAET? And feel free to join in, Michelle, to share your experience and opinion on this.
Well, in the beginning, we just changed a little bit because you're just moving from NAET to the total reset method, and we still had to look for new things. So in the beginning, we just worked with the protocol that we got from Dr. Davy. But it's frustrating. It's frustrating for the practitioner. It's frustrating for the patient. And I mean, a protocol is okay if you can get back to the protocol. If you don't know what to do anymore, then the protocol is a safe place to go back to, and then from there you can move on. But if you can really test with kinesiology, you can do a lot more. You can do 2, 3, 4 treatments in one session instead of one basic item, like you do the egg mix the first time, and the next time they come you do the calcium mix, and then the next time you do the vitamin C mix, and you move on like that. And after the first 15 basic treatments, then you can start doing the pollens. And if you really know how to test, and you can trust yourself, you can trust how you test, you can do a lot more. So then you can change the way you treat people. So you don't have to start with all the basics before you move on to the pollens, for instance, because people with hay fever, they just come to the office because they are having problems with pollens. They don't know that they are allergic or sensitive to different foods. And then we do a lot more with treating for emotions, underlying emotions. And then, of course, in 2017, we got a first seminar from Michel in Holland, and it was like, wow, but it's too much. By then, for us it was too much. So I didn't do anything with it until last November. I did a seminar again, and then all these little pieces of the puzzle, they just fell into place. And with this extra protocol that he was putting out, you can help people a lot faster, because you don't start superficial with treating the basics. You just dive into the problem.
Yes, excellent. So that leads on very nicely to the work Michelle has been doing. And can I just say, both Michelle and Jolande, you were in the UK quite recently, and we had a small gathering, I would say, not a seminar, not a training, but just an introduction to the total reset method and the autoimmune methods that you're using. And hopefully that is the stepping stone to a bigger seminar to introduce total reset method and the autoimmune methods to the UK. And we're hoping to do that this summer. And again, we'll post out the details in the description. But following on from what you've just introduced us to, Jolande, if Michelle, you want to talk about how you then added your research to the total reset method and developed this approach that you use now.
Yes, my background, my experience is quite different from Jolande. Because I was isolated, and in fact, in 2004, I was running a small company, and one of my employees from Iran, a young lady, came crying to my office telling me that she had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and would be in a wheelchair by November. So I told her, wait, I'm committed to being trained in California by David Nambudripad. I will take care of you as soon as I'm back. So my first patient had an autoimmune disease, multiple sclerosis. Of course, I treated her for free because it took a very long time, about 200 treatments. And then she was healed. She has never been in a wheelchair, but I could not understand what I'd done that made sense. And that's when I met with, by chance, serendipity, they say, in London at a symposium with Dr. Roland Brandmeier from Germany. And we chatted about this. He understood the whole thing and wrote the book, which is my reference, False Targets. What's essential in his contribution is to oblige us to use kinesiology for starting with the symptoms of the patient, as opposed to traditional treatment where people get a medication for each symptom. We are not looking at that. We are looking for the common cause. And it is quite often autoimmune, and therefore amenable to the treatment that was taught at that time by NAET. So he published his book in 2016. So the turn of event was precisely my first seminar was in Cambridge for NAET people, and my second seminar was for Total Reset in Holland. I also didn't want to be at all an organizer and was very happy that there were organizers for Total Reset throughout Europe. So I taught it in Madrid and of course in France as well. I want to say that the future of medicine should be a rapprochement by taking into account the fact that the body is governed by laws from biochemistry, certainly as we understand it in Occident, but also by laws of energetics which are taught in the Indian subcontinent with the chakras, and of course in Far East with the meridians. But it is not enough to accumulate them. We have to deepen our understanding so that we get the full power of each one of these three techniques. And that's an area of investigation for every new patient. Is that understandable?
Yes, absolutely. So tell us more. I mean, then you started using the book that Roland has compiled, and then how does that relate to the total reset method, and what approach do you take? What's the practical process that you utilize?
Oh, we are a little bit ahead of what Jolande has explained, but in the sense that I consider if someone has plenty of allergies, we first should consider the damage done by some autoimmune disease on some organ. And typically, the irritable bowel syndrome is made out of three autoimmune diseases, ulcerative colitis, Crohn, and celiac, and they are all easy to cure. There is a big difference with the autoimmune diseases which are destructive, like diabetes. Today, we do not have a solution. And there are lots of misunderstandings about degenerative disease like Parkinson. I have used Total Reset for treating several cases, 7 or 8 cases of Parkinson, and they are now completely healed. So there is no end in sight about what we can accomplish. It's just limited by our capability to explore enough cases.
And you learned how, having experienced NAET for a long time, how do you think this approach differs? I mean, what's been the results that you've seen in a practical setting in your clinics? How has the experience differed, and how's your experience differed as a practitioner?
Well, what we did until well this year was people come in with a complaint, skin, stomach, intestines, headaches, whatever, and you always started general. You do the basics, and then for hay fever, of course, the pollens. For an allergy to animals, you do the animals, and then you just start asking the body questions. And now when someone comes in, and it doesn't matter where they are suffering from, I always start with testing the basics, because I for myself, I want to have an oversight of the basics, the weak ones. But then I start testing for mast cell MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome, for radiation, and for the RRSNS. And RRSNS stands for resetting the recognition of the self and the non-self. And if that one is weak, I know there is an autoimmune disease underlying all your complaints. And I found out that if I start treating the MCAS file, mast cell activation syndrome, a lot of the allergies that I tested in the basics are gone when they come back the next week. I don't have to treat them anymore, because you treat the underlying problem, the histamine sensitivity. And of course, I treated the histamine in the past when people came in and they had a lot of problems with the allergies, and they were histamine sensitive when they had a blood test or whatever. But that didn't do the trick. And now we have the supervile MCAS treatment, and then a lot of the allergies, a lot of the sensitivities, you don't have to treat them anymore. So it changed a lot of in my treatments.
What I mean, when we had this, you visited the UK, and I was learning about the new developments that are taking place. And what I found interesting was that it's a different way of looking at allergies, in the sense that if, for example, if we use hay fever, we regard classically as an allergy to pollens, and you would have runny nose and itchy eyes, and if we classically try to, I mean, in conventional medicine, what we do is give antihistamines, because the understanding is that there's too much histamine production, and for whatever reason, the person is sensitive to this agent, external agent, which is pollen, and that's causing all these symptoms. So the antihistamines just dampen the immune system and try and block a pathway in that cascade of activity that's taking place in the body. And that blocks a certain level and relieves your symptoms. But ultimately, it doesn't cure you. It doesn't get rid of the underlying issue. And it doesn't ask the question, why is that person, this is not normal. It's an abnormal response to something that isn't an attacking agent. Pollen isn't an enemy. It's not some dangerous element. So why is that person's body reacting? So the problem is not the pollen. The problem is somewhere deeper within that person's chemical biological imbalance. So this is what I find fascinating, is that this method looks deeper to try and find where those issues may lie. And within NAET, I guess, for example, again, going back to pollen, sometimes it could have been an allergy to sugar, to another element that actually within that whole cascade that triggers off and results in pollen being the agent that causes the symptoms. So if you went through the entire protocol, at some point, treatment number 15 or 20, you'd get to, by accident maybe, something that would help. And then all of a sudden the hay fever disappears. But it wasn't the pollen, it was something else that was a lock in the whole mechanism, and it releases you of this condition. So this method now, the total reset method, it's more scientific, I feel, in its approach, and it looks at the deeper underlying issues and takes a very methodical approach of looking at the underlying cascade and things that can go wrong on a deeper level. And if those are unlocked, then it helps to the issues that you have, but also, is it right to say, Michelle, that these things untreated and would develop further and could potentially lead to full-blown autoimmune conditions in years to come?
Yes, in fact, I should say about statistics about that. Holland and Brandmeier had identified 41 autoimmune diseases. But research is going on, especially in America. And today we have a list of 115 autoimmune diseases. And the number of people who have one of those is astounding, probably due to pollution. As Jolande was mentioning, the recognition of the self and the non-self, that's probably what is damaged by pollution. And after that, since you already have lymphocytes able to produce antibodies for a number of vaccines you benefited from, or for a number of diseases you had to fight against, then the lack of capability for recognition of the self leads to what's called mimetism, which means that the body is confused and finds the same target on the body that it had found on an infectant. I want to add also that we investigated the series of events that must happen to fight any virus. And then we found that there was an antibody in many people which prevents the antiviral defense. It's the antibody against interferon type 1. So sometimes it's quite surprising with the side effects of autoimmunity.
And this method, I mean, you call it the total reset method, which is, I mean, it's a good description really, because what you're trying to do is reset the recognition of the body in its totality to these various agents and balance. Is that right? You're trying to rebalance or reset? Jolande?
Well, the total reset, there are two different things. You have the total reset method, and you have Michel's approach, ITE, immune therapy by energetics. And it's it's part of TRM, but it's not really connected. It's not like you need to do the TRM seminars before you can start with autoimmune, with the ITE. If you can test, if you can do a muscle test, if you have some kinesiology background, you can become a practitioner in the ITE. So we work together, but we're not one body. Is that correct, Michelle?
Yeah, let me say, for instance, when we talk about the recognition of the self and the non-self, the recognition of the self means that we are not going to have an autoimmune disease, but the non-recognition of the non-self means that we are not going to fight properly cancer cells. And so there is another area where I'm having lots of patients, in fact. It's a treatment of cancer, but this is not brought yet thoroughly into total reset training. Yeah. But someday when we are mature enough, it will come.
So just to repeat that, so the recognition of the self is autoimmune. The recognition of the non-self is just reiterate that. Sorry.
Recognition of the self avoids autoimmunity of the self, and the recognition of the non-self avoids not fighting an infectant or a malignant cell.
Okay.
And when this is degraded, it is never perfect, cannot be perfect, because we have to tolerate genetic changes that happen all the time in the form of what's called allele. And that's why we have to struggle to have it at its best. That's all we can do.
Okay. Excellent. Now, just to touch upon the upcoming planned seminar in the UK, Jolande, any words for those that would be interested? What prerequisites, what training would people need to have in order to join this seminar, and what would they gain from this seminar in terms of training and in terms of those that are practitioners of other alternative therapies, who can develop their skill sets and who can benefit from this as practitioners, but also as those that require therapy? What types of therapies can benefit from this approach?
Then you're talking about a TRM method.
Yeah.
It's on its own. Well, if we're talking about the therapists that are already did the NAET seminars, there are a lot of add-ons for them where they can work with, and people from other therapies. They learn how to muscle test, how to test for sensitivities and allergies and other disbalances, of course, and how to eliminate them so the body can come back to their own state of health. And then after that, you can do the ITE seminars. So you can deepen your insights and your practice and how you work with it, because TRM is TRM on its own. It's still touching the surface of it. So you need the ITE to get deeper into the problems. You can get really to the core of the cause of the illness. And then, because I always said, when you go to the doctor for eczema, you get this hormone cream, and you put it on your skin, and then the eczema disappears, but the cause is still there. This fire is still burning, only you put a blanket on it. So if you take away the blanket, if you don't put the cream on your skin anymore, the eczema will come back. So with the total reset, we treat the cause of the eczema. But now I think that the allergies are still a symptom of the body to say, okay, you know, there is something going on inside, but I can't tell you because I don't have the words. I need to show you by giving you pain or giving you an allergy.
Yes, absolutely.
I can
So
give, excuse me, I can give a simple explanation of why the teaching by NAET was blocked at some point. It's the use of the word allergy, because allergy means that for some ingredient there is too much energy, but there is the opposite, which is anergy, quite well known in oncology. Anergy means insufficient energy. So when you want to fight an infection, like the SARS-CoV-2 of COVID, you have an allergy on the virus, the SARS-CoV-2, but you have an allergy on the defense system, which means the myeloid killer cells. So you have to take both into account if you want to fight correctly an infection. Now, if you bring in the concept of allergy, it changes a lot the understanding of the body.
So for those interested in the upcoming seminar, I mean, it would make sense if they have trained in NAET. I guess that's, you know, they would benefit the most, and it would be a natural evolution from the training that they've had in NAET to learn about the total reset method and the immunotherapy methods. Other practitioners, kinesiologists, those working within energy, healing, allergy-based therapies, alternative therapies, acupuncture, acupressure, and any sort of alternative therapist really who's interested in healing, I guess is welcome to attend and can definitely learn from these therapies. And again, it's autoimmune conditions. It could be things considered trivial like skin allergies, hay fever, sinusitis, to all the way to irritable bowel and beyond, really, bowel disorders, inflammatory bowel conditions. There's so many conditions that, I mean, on the list that you've worked with. Are there any common ones that you've come across that you've found good results with? Jolande, Michelle, either of you?
I am still very new in treating the autoimmune diseases. So I'm having, there are a few patients now that come to my office with an autoimmune disease. One of them is anti-phospholipid syndrome. And I have a little girl, she's not so little anymore. She came to me when she was, or her parents came to me when she was 4, and she had an anaphylactic reaction to peanuts and to other nuts. She's very sensitive for a lot of stuff. And now she developed diabetes type 1. But it's really in the beginning. So I said, okay, we're going to start working on that immediately. And I know diabetes type 1 is very difficult because type 2 is easier to work with. But yeah, yesterday or the day before, I got a WhatsApp message from her mother, because after the treatment, she is very sick. And when we did the anaphylactic treatment for the nuts in the beginning, she was very sick after the treatment as well. And she has the same things again now. But she said her values are now level. And before it was high, it was low. They had a lot of trouble with the insulin, giving the insulin. And now it's level, so that's very fast. I just did 1 or 2 treatments for it too. Yeah. So I'm very happy. Her mother is very happy.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You touched upon previously about sort of the emotional side of it, but also with your analogy that you use for eczema, putting a blanket on it. From my experience, I found that the way we look at allergens needs to change, because rarely have I found that somebody has eczema and it affects their skin alone. They will always have some other issues, whether it's bowel related, whether it's mood related, whether it's sort of other systems involved. There is always some correlation. And now the research in recent years has proven that mental health is linked to gut health. So, there's a clear link there, that there is an overlap, and gut health is linked to brain health and skin health and psychological, emotional, and it's also intertwined. So again, when we talk about emotional imbalances and issues, they can lead to physical manifestations of allergens and autoimmune conditions. So this approach looks at emotions and balances emotions as well as the physical elements. So again, there's an holistic approach there. So yeah, anything else you want to add, Michelle?
Yeah, I would add that the most frequent and quite frequent disease, which is very sad to observe, is arthritis. You can see a number of old people crippled practically, simply because they have not known how to take care of either spondyloarthritis for the vertebrae or osteoarthritis. There are a number of forms. Hallux valgus, for instance, is a good sign that you have to treat arthritis. And of course, the others are the blood problem and most of the problems of the heart that can be considered as autoimmune, blood clots, and also the varicose veins. There are indications that we have to treat some autoimmunity.
Anything else, Jolande, Michelle, that you want to touch on? I think we've covered quite a lot, and much of it is completely new to myself, even. And
More than half an hour.
Yeah, we've covered practically everything as an overview. So I'm hopeful that our listeners, viewers out there will find it a good overview. And I'm hoping that this is the first of many discussions on this new and evolving approach. And that's the most exciting part for me, is that this is an evolving approach, that you're learning something new, quite literally on a daily basis, and developing and expanding the techniques. So it's constantly changing and evolving, and for the betterment of our patients, really, more than anything else. And this approach really, it's a two-way process. It's not the practitioner and the patient. It's actually a two-way process, I think, from experience, seeing you in action, that from every patient you learn something, and you take that back and you develop and you expand and you change your approaches based on your findings. And that's the best part I find with this approach, that you have, that is constantly improving itself through your efforts. So excellent to see you today, and I hope we can develop this further and learn more. Anything you want to add? Any final words?
No, it was really nice to be here.
Looking forward to the seminar in England.
Yes.
Definitely. Thank you very much. And I will add all the links in the description for any more information, and anybody who wants to ask any questions, feel free in the comments below. Thank you very much.
Thank you.